Hey everyone, this is Sarah
And Rebecca.
and we are back talking to you guys about something that if you are watching videos on BookTube, if you're watching videos even on AuthorTube, you've heard about a lot, and this is toxic relationships. So we want to sort of come at it at a different angle. We want to talk about what are the types of toxic relationships, what do those look like, what sort of behaviors are there, and we're hoping that by identifying these things, you can, as authors, you can tweak your writing to not include toxic relationships, and then also as readers, you can understand, like, yes, this is a very swoon-worthy couple, or this is a very swoon-worthy storyline, but it also has elements that are quite toxic, because I think, like, we're not entirely responsible authors for like only promoting good examples, like good moral people, right? Like, we have some leeway to present real people, and real people are complex and dynamic and sometimes toxic and inappropriate. But I think we also have to recognize that if you're writing for a young audience, you have some responsibility there to, in my opinion, and people can disagree, but I believe you have some responsibility there to at least, like, if you're having these characters, at least identify it somehow.
Identify it or make it not the main love story.
Right. Maybe it's not the main love story, or maybe in the end, the characters aren't together. If you have a relationship that is toxic, maybe that's not your end game. Rebecca, you have done a lot of research on the different types of toxic and even abusive relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna start by talking about those. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time talking about books that include these, because we all know them.
Right. Instead of focusing on the problem, we're going to focus on the solutions.
Right. That's the goal.
So basically, coming from a psychological human standpoint, romantic relationships can be broken into 4 general categories. The first one, the goal is a healthy relationship. It's categorized by mutual love and respect. So you guys fight fair, you're compromising, you're working on problem solving together, openly communicating about everything, just a lot of honesty, as well as celebrating each other's independence. After that, it's difficult, which is categorized by the couple being sort of fundamentally different, whether that's because they come from a different upbringing, or they have a different religion or different political beliefs, or they just have different communication styles, but there's just something that doesn't make them see eye to eye. But difficult is not necessarily bad, because it's also categorized by these are 2 still very loving people who respect each other and want to get to a place where they can see eye to eye. They're working towards being healthy. So even if you're in sort of a difficult scenario, as long as you're willing to work together to grow together, then it's not necessarily, you don't move into that toxic section.
And just to jump in here, I think a lot of relationships in books are difficult, because that is, or at least they start in the difficult category, because that's such a good conflict for these 2 people to overcome. So the goal of a difficult relationship then is to fix it in a healthy way, right? Is to, like, overcome it in a way where both
in a healthy
people,
way, learn.
Yeah, where they're respecting each other and they're learning how to work together and support each other. But so many times, especially in these books that we recognize as being kind of toxic, right? Like Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey, right?
All of them.
Right? Romeo and Juliet. These difficult relationships then take a turn into toxic or sometimes even abusive scenarios. So go ahead and let's talk about those.
So toxic, it has mutual love, but it does not have mutual respect. These are 2 people who think that their problems don't boil down to themselves, basically. it's the other person's fault. It's an external force's fault where I don't need to work on it. I don't need to change anything. I'm fine. We're just, we just fight. We're just passionate. That's my least favorite thing to hear on TV and in books when people are toxic or abusive and they label it as, we're just very passionate.
Right.
They don't want to sort of work together. They want to fight not fair, fight difficultly. They can omit information or lie about things to make themselves look or feel better. They can belittle each other to each other. It's not healthy. Not wanting to move into compromise and healthy.
Right.
And then last, the worst of all of them, is an abusive relationship. Now, abuse really boils down to power and control. There are a lot of resources online. Honestly, if you want to know more or you want to just learn about the warning signs, just Google power and control wheel and it'll come right up, and it breaks it down, because a lot of people, when they think abuse, they don't think that they're being abused because they are not being hit or sexually assaulted, but that's not the case. Abuse boils down to a lot of different kinds of behaviors. It's also emotional abuse. It is using isolation. It's what else do I have? Minimizing, denying, and blaming, using male privilege, saying like these are the gender roles and this is what we're gonna do. Using economic abuse is a big one too that people don't realize. A Court of Thorns and Roses, at one point I'm pretty sure Tamlin straight up is like, hey, you're free to leave, but if you do, I'm gonna stop helping your family.
And this is withholding things to show power. I think we need to be careful with that, like the power dynamic too, because so many stories are like attractive to us because it's about a girl or it's about a man falling for a person in power. And like that power is part of what is attractive about that person. And so we need to make sure that if we're writing about people who are using their power inappropriately in an abusive way, that we are somehow identifying it, or like the character somehow realizes it, or like the narration, it makes it very clear that this is not kosher, right? Like something needs to be there to show that. So those are the 4 types of relationships, right? And hopefully when we're writing these characters, we're sticking up in the first 2, right? We're sticking either like this is a healthy relationship, so where does the conflict then come in? Or we're sticking in like this is a difficult relationship, so now where does the conflict come in with these characters? How do we watch them compromise? I'm thinking of a story right now that's like this, but it's well, it's going to be spoilery if I say it, but there's a certain TV show that I love where the characters are so lovely together and you ship them so hard, but in the end, they don't end up together because they are from completely different stations in life. One person
I know what you're talking about. I was like, what is she referring to? I get it now.
One person has a job that doesn't allow them to be with the other person. So yeah,
another somewhat spoily.
Okay.
Here's the thing though, I'll give an example of a show that's over. So like if you haven't seen it by now, then like whatever.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Yeah.
Leading up to the series finale, she had 3 suitors and didn't end up with any of them. Instead, saying that a love story doesn't need to be an ending. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing my passion right now because that's what I need to do.
this is from like a writing perspective. You're looking at the character that you created and you're thinking, does it make sense for this person to compromise? You know, like there are some things that like someone just won't compromise on. And for them then to end up in a romantic relationship by the end and like a happy ending romantically, then just doesn't quite make sense. And then you need to pivot and think, okay, what makes more sense for this character? For Rebecca Bunch, it made more sense for her to be alone. Okay, so we know that these things are bad. And I'm seeing more and more book reviewers and people on BookTube and Book Twitter identifying these things and like actively choosing not to read books that include abusive scenarios or even toxic scenarios. So why are we still writing them, and like why are we still attracted to them? Like why is the bad boy trope so appealing? Because it is, right? Like it's so appealing to have this like hot jerk.
When it comes to a bad boy, we just have it so ingrained in us that every bad boy has a heart of gold, according to society and to media and to movies that we watched.
We want to find that so badly.
We want to find it, and we want to just like get in there, and we want to fix them, and it's not healthy for us because we shouldn't be trying to fix anybody.
Right. That's not a person in a relationship's job to fix the other person. And I think too, it's like we want to feel special. We want to feel like we are the only person who this person could love and who this person could see, changing them. Like if someone tells you that, that makes you feel special, it makes you feel needed, and it makes you wonder what would happen if I leave. Like if I leave, he's not going to be okay, right? So I need to stick around because this guy loves me. He thinks I'm special. He makes me feel special. Can you define the love bombing?
And that's part of the love bombing.
Yeah, can you define that? Because that's like a big part of this. I want to feel special.
So the love bombing stage at the beginning of relationships that are toxic or abusive are the beginning, the honeymoon stage-ish, where this guy, or I guess sometimes girl, but this guy is just like, you're amazing, you're so special, we're soulmates, and they're luring you in with affection, with compliments, they're gifting you things, and you feel like such a queen, and they like get you to commit really fast. That's a big part of it, getting someone locked in, which again makes you feel so special. Like, oh my gosh, we've only been on 2 dates and he already wants to be my boyfriend, like it's this beginning phase, and it's really easy for abusers to use it to their advantage, because then if you've been showered with amazing, wonderful attention and love for 2 months, if he does something really bad, something that's hinting towards abuse, it's really easily explained away as like, well, that's not his real character. That's not how he is. It was just an off thing. And you sweep it under the rug and you don't notice as it happens more and more. And then you are in it. You're committed. You love this human. That goes along with the fixing then too when it comes to these kinds of relationships. Then you're like, well, I just need to get him back to how we were before. And then it just, the intensity, the epic highs and lows kind of become this sort of obsession, this sort of addiction in these relationships where like, yeah, when it's low, it's low, but when it's high, it's just amazing, and it's not healthy doing those things.
But love bombing seems very romantic, and this seems like a good way for one character to show another character how much they mean to them. And that's something that, like, if I were reading it, I would feel really like, oh, that's so lovely. Like, I would feel really happy to read that. Mm-hmm. But then we need to make sure, like, that this is just a kind gesture, that it's not part of that cycle, that it's just nice, that they just got a gift.
Like, I saw this and thought of you. I was cleaning out my
Right.
garage the other day and I saw something and I was like, oh, Ken from work would love this. And I brought it to Ken, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be a big, huge romantic thing. It could just be like, oh, I saw it and thought of you and I was like, gotta get it, you know?
Right. We've talked about things to kind of like watch out for in relationships that we're reading, and then things that that we should be watching out for as writers. So like, where are good examples?
I really like Katniss and Peeta. I wish that she would have given us more build up to them instead of just an epilogue being like, and they're married with 2 kids and everything's great, you know? But because I think that's honestly where people have the issue.
Yeah.
More so, but he always adored her. He always supported her without smothering. He gave her space when she needed it, and he was there when she needed it. He didn't ask for anything in return. He wanted to be there in the same way that she wanted to be there. And their friendship, their partnership was built off of this deep mutual trust. They had to trust each other to get out of that scenario. So really, it was a true partnership, I think, that was built on respect for one another and respect for their experience and their trauma that they needed to deal with on their own while still caring about each other and wanting to be there for each other. During my research, I read a lot of those, like, these are the good couples, these are the bad couples lists. And this book I haven't particularly read, so I'll let you go on it. But a couple that came up again and again were Tris and Four from Divergent.
Yeah, and I like them too. At the beginning, it doesn't seem like they're going to be a good couple because he is in a position of power. Like, he's her trainer, like mentor. He's like kind of overseeing the new Dauntless. And so he's kind of a jerk. Like, he's a hot jerk. But then as he learns more about Tris, as Tris kind of discovers a little bit more about this world, we realize that he's just closed off, and he begins to open himself to Tris and really establish a trusting relationship, a relationship of mutual trust, because he knows something about her pretty early on that could get her killed. And he protects that information and then eventually lets her in on some information about himself that wouldn't get him killed, but that he's repressed, that he hasn't talked about or thought about or tried to think about in a long time. And then I think from like halfway through the first book, or maybe like 3/4 of way through the first book to the rest of the series, they're very supportive of one another.
I didn't see her and any of these gentlemen come up on my lists, but I wanted to include them. I'm a big Sarah J. Maas fan, as we know. Maas, I don't know.
I think it's Maas.
But the Throne of Glass series, throughout the whole thing, the main female protagonist has 4 different love interests, which is pretty impressive because I feel like giving that many people like will they, won't they's is dangerous territory for Endgame.
Like a love pentagon?
Yeah, you didn't meet her endgame until the 4th book, basically.
Right.
But no matter...
It's realistic.
It is, yeah. The first guy you meet is more than likely not gonna be your forever. That's like a very low chance. But whether it was Sam, Dorian, I like to call him Kale, or Rowan, she was always the problem, basically. Because that's her character. Like, you see these male characters. I think she's like Jack Sparrow, but a female. She just does things, and it works. But she doesn't tell anybody. So it's like just these guys are always along for the ride. So she's the withholding one, and they just have to, like, step up and support her. And whenever... I mean, one of them, spoiler, one of them died, but the other 3 just really respected her, and she really cared and respected for them. So even after the relationships that didn't work out, there was so much mutual love and genuine friendship and genuine emotion that they stayed on amazing terms the whole rest of the series, and it wasn't this whole like, well, we're not together anymore, so forget you and I'm gonna go do my thing, you know. Even the one character where it like didn't end awesome, they had some tensiony moments, but it was, you know, like it was never abusive or toxic. They never belittled each other in front of other people. They never fought really, really dirty. She just, yeah. The external conflict was enough where the internal of people just dealing with their own traumas, it didn't need extra. She did a very good job world building where we didn't need that sort of conflict in the Throne of Glass series.
So that's another example of like men who do it right. We have a lot of examples of men who don't do it right.
Mm-hmm. Rowan gets a lot of crap. I've mentioned this to you before. Rowan gets a lot of issue because, like For and Triss, he comes in as like a mentor trainer position. So there are moments where they just like beat the crap out of each other, and he gets a lot of crap because it's like, well, he's a big strong guy that's like beating a woman, but
she's an assassin.
She's an assassin, and she's giving it right back to him. Like, that's just where they are. They're training, like,
right.
And they don't like each other at first, but they respect each other, and they respect each other's skills, and that those feelings, the romanticism, the friendship, it grows over time into a partnership of equal beings.
How can we as writers create characters who are in relationships with other characters that are not exhibiting toxic or abusive characteristics, but still fluidity? So we talked about giving them some conflict that's outside of the relationship that they have to work through and that they have to find compromises for. Or if it's a difficult relationship where there are fundamental differences, how do they work through that together, like show that progression? I think a lot of stories do that well. And then what are the other obstacles that we can put in the story that are not just the guy being or the girl being emotionally unavailable, right? Like that's not a good obstacle. If that's the obstacle in your relationship, then that's probably not going to be something you want to pursue. So if it's something where they are available and they are at the table and they are ready to make compromises or to discuss the differences, then that sounds like a conflict that we can work through and that I want to read about. So thank you, Rebecca, for doing all that research on toxic relationships. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, or if you can think of any other really good examples of characters who are really supportive of one another, leave those in the comments as well, and hopefully this helps you think through some of that writing, some of that character development.